In the last lecture, we finished this recipe list component. Now let's work on the recipe detail. Now for the recipe detail here, there I want to output the information about the selected recipe. So in here, in this HTML file, I'll add another Bootstrap row and then a column spanning over the full width. And keep in mind, the detail will be added to our component here in the recipes component. So it will be in this column on the right to the list. But in there, I want to have a column spanning the full available width. And I want to start by displaying the image. So let's add the image here. And let's add the image responsive class to it. Now I will fill this with live and output some data there later. Below the image, I'll have another row. In this row, also have a column spanning the full width. And here, maybe output the recipe name. So recipe name would be nice to see here. Then maybe another row with another column in there spanning the full width again. And here, what I want to add is I want to have buttons which allow me to manage this recipe. So a button which allows us to add it to the shopping list, and then one which allows us to edit it or to delete it. And actually, we could use a drop-down here. Such a drop-down may be added here by adding a div with the Bootstrap class button group. And again, this is just how to create a nice looking drop-down using the Bootstrap CSS framework, which is the framework we use in this project. Here, we need a button which will open the drop-down. This will be of type button, and it will receive a class of button. Then I'll use the button primary look, which is this bluish button. And very important, it will also receive the class drop-down toggle because it will act as such. On this button, I want to say manage recipe maybe, because we want to allow the user to manage this single recipe. And I want to add this span with the class Caray to have this arrow pointing to the bottom again. And I will distribute this over multiple lines so that it's really easy to see what's going on here. That's the button opening the dropdown. Below it, I'll have an unordered list with the class dropdown menu, and that is exactly the same setup as we chose in the header here, where we also had this drop-down menu unordered list, because that's the nice thing about Bootstrap. Drop-downs work the same no matter if you place them here in the header or use a separate button for them. And then here, the list items, the separate actions I want to have. The first one, pointing to just hash for now, should actually allow us to add ingredients to shopping list maybe. Let's see if that is too long of a string. Then I want to have a button which allows us to edit recipe and one which allows us to delete the recipe. Maybe let's rename the first one to shopping list so that it's not that much longer than the other ones. With that should be a working dropdown, but we're not going to find out before we implement it. Something we'll do after the directives section. Now below this dropdown here though, I want to add another row. And in this row here, with another column spanning the full width, I want to output the description of this recipe. Well, and then at the very bottom, I'll add the last row for now, also with a full width column. Here, we'll output the ingredients. We're not storing any ingredients on our recipe now, but we'll do so soon, and this is a nice place to output it. So that is the recipe detail component, having all the logic inside of it, which we need to display the details, and then having some options to go somewhere else in our app or to trigger something else in our app, like editing the recipe. We'll of course add all those features throughout the course. And now with that added and set up here, let's see how that looks like. Looks pretty good. We got the name, the description, ingredients, a button which doesn't work, of course. We're going to fix this later in the course. And we don't see an image at the top because right now image, well, doesn't have a source or anything like that. Now, of course, it would be nice if we could select a recipe here in the list and display it in this recipe detail component. But one issue we have with this is we can't get our selected recipe into the detail component because the detail component is added here in our recipes component, where we also have the list. And communicating between the two components, list and detail, is something we don't know how to do right now. We have the same issue in the list component where we had to put in the code for a single item temporarily, because if we would outsource it to the recipe item component, we couldn't pass our recipe in this loop of recipes to that component. So that cross-component communication is a huge issue right now, but no worries, that is something we're going to dive deeper into in the next course section, and thereafter we'll come back to this and enable all that communication, which allows us to outsource this code into its own component and make these links clickable so that we actually load the right recipe on the right. Before doing this, let's wrap up this section here, this first part of our project, by working on the shopping list feature.